Welcome everybody to Grapple University Unit 1 Part 2. Hopefully we've managed to up the production value slightly, given an increase in our budget of $0 for a total of $0. Moving right along, the kneeler can be quite difficult to engage with if they disconnect from your control. They can rest or stall, or if actively looking to win, re-engage suddenly with a grinding style of passing. If unable to reconnect, the guard player has the option of just getting up, which is fine for MMA or self-defense, or they have to just sit up and engage from a seated guard, or more specifically, a seated butterfly guard. If disconnected or in an open guard, your bum should be the furthest line back, while your hand should be the first line of contact with the palm slightly turned up. You should have a proud, open chest to keep from slouching, and your neck should lean slightly forward but not be looking down. If connected, your legs should be in a butterfly position with both shins flared out into the passer's inner thighs. In an open guard situation, however, it is often better to be in a staggered butterfly with one leg in a post minimally extended and the other on its side so that you can funnel the passer towards the middle and move more freely in general, which we will discuss at greater length in Unit 2. Some common mistakes from the butterfly guard include leaning too far back with a collapsed chest or too forwards with your head low and grabbable. Although minor, palms facing up in the open guard could be used to shove you backwards, and narrow butterfly wings can get pinched and smashed, while extended legs will make it difficult to move and provide easy access to dumping you onto your back. Although seated butterfly guard could be described as an open guard, it has the potential to be a hybrid push-pull guard as well after contact is established. When connected, your legs act as frames at the shin and can press a modest degree. However, your legs can also now elevate, which opens up the opportunity for new types of sweeps and leg entanglements. Your arms, meanwhile, are occupied with pulling. Using a butterfly shell hybrid system, you can combine the hand fighting skills introduced in Part 1 in either a seated or supine position. Your legs now have the options of being butterfly hooks connected to the thighs, a leg press on the hips, and base on the ground, or a mix of combinations. As demonstrated here, using an eagle claw control, the opponent can be pressed away or elevated. More standard controls will be explored shortly. And we simply cannot continue before acknowledging the contributions of the great Marcelo Garcia. Much of what you will see explored in Unit 1 would not have been possible without him. He truly revolutionized the sport by not only being a winner in both gi and no gi, but crucially showing a willingness to share his knowledge. All things butterfly, hand fighting, and all the hybrid X guard variations you will see have roots that trace back to Marcelo, even the wizard Ryan Hall. Let's take a moment now to introduce the wrestler archetype. Aggressive, mobile, and often with a high work rate, in other words, in shape, the wrestler tries to go through the guard with heavy forward pressure and sharp angles. The wrestler uses pawing snapdowns, shoves, clears, and throw-bys of the legs to clear the way. If the kneeler is a tree stump, the wrestler is a battering ram. The goal is to drive their head under their opponent's chin right into the chest, where they will look to set up bullfighter or toreando passes, double unders, and knee slices, while camping in half guard variations. The wrestler features quick elevation changes, going from the knees to standing to combat base and back down again. Some of the pros include legs that are constantly in a low squat and able to quickly recover laterally into base. Both arms and legs are often strong, mobile, and out of reach. The wrestler can be incredibly difficult to deal with if you don't match their aggression head on. If you find yourself on your back in a supine position, all you can do is really weather the storm with a strong shell guard, meaning constant framing and guard recovery movements, which we will address in Unit 2. If in a seated position, you must remain diligent with your hand fighting and hold your ground, which is easier said than done. But the wrestler can tire if constantly held back by diligent framing and inefficiently trying to break through the shell head on. Forcing the sprinter to stop and restart can lead to kneeler type behavior, and they also have one major kink in their armor. By aggressively moving forward head on, their posture is highly vulnerable. Ironically, the best tool against the wrestler is to time your own collar tie snapdown. This will stall them in their tracks, where you can then hand fight more effectively. You can also potentially set up the easiest butterfly sweep in the world. It's simply a matter of snapping their head down and then using a single butterfly hook to steer them into a sweep. It is less an elevation at this point because their posture is so broken. You simply need to just catch and slightly lift their trailing leg. Just make sure that your other leg is in base so you remain mobile. Ideally, you would like to catch the inside collar tie and then remove the potential posting arm with your free arm as you rock to your shoulder. However, change of direction is often hard to predict, and any collar tie will at least stop the attack. So don't worry so much about which arm to use for your collar tie. An underhook paired with a collar tie can be just as effective against a wrestler aggressively moving forward. To turn the butterfly guard into more than just an open guard, meaningful contact must be established. While it is indeed possible to use the 2-in-1 grips from part 1 to elevate an opponent, they're more likely to result in a leg entanglement instead of an outright sweep. However, you can indeed use such hand fighting techniques to get into tighter pulling configurations if your goal is to use your butterfly hooks to their fullest potential. Having said that, it's a lot harder to butterfly sweep the kneeler since momentum isn't being provided. Some sort of double underhooks control needs to be established. Classically, this is done by locking the hands around the passer's back. However, if your arms are short or they have a large torso, attempting to do so can cause you to lean backwards, and you might then be driven into a smash butterfly position. It is also possible for the person on top to pummel back inside without great difficulty. A slight modern update is to control the trapezius muscles and use a double trap control variation on the double underhooks theme, which makes it harder for the passer to pummel as well and keeps you in a better postural alignment. After making this strong connection, the sweep becomes possible after slightly angling out and then rocking to your shoulder. This time the use of your butterfly hook becomes much more important. Kick the hook straight up in the air as much as possible, more so than kicking out to the side, which can put too much of a load at the end of the lever to your hip. Try and kick with just the lower leg and bring it back to a cocked position as quickly as possible to avoid ending up in guard, though that's not the end of the world. Quickly pull the potential posting arm towards their core to complete the sweep. Note that it becomes more important to plant your non-elevating leg and base on the floor from looser configurations where you will need to generate and absorb greater force. A bonus control variation, first demonstrated by Eddie Cummings, utilizes a collar tie and overhook combination. From a retreat off an eagle claw control, hook under the arm with an uppercut motion, pinning the arm tight to your chest. Quickly grab a collar tie and grab your bicep with a rear naked choke type grip. You can use this to execute a reverse butterfly sweep to the trap side or an opportunistic back attack. Those who do not willingly accept sweeps, which should be everyone, will actively post with their arms and base out with their legs. This forces the guard player to entangle the leg to either again try to sweep or, fuck it, try a leg lock. What that really means is our fourth principle, which is entangle a leg and then maybe try a leg lock, but this isn't priority number 1. It's control. Controlling a leg ideally with 2 of yours. Like hand fighting, we aim for 2-on-1 control. When there is a risk of ending up in a smash butterfly position, it is very common to transition to a single leg X position. The single leg X is a basic open circuit leg entanglement. We call it open circuit because the legs do not cross over one another to completely bind the leg. However, even with open circuits, we try our best to use shearing forces to secure the leg. Single leg X is synonymous with standard Ashigarami, one leg X, and Anaconda guard. Shoutouts to Damian Maya for his pioneering work, even though no one seems to remember he gave it this name. And I'm sorry, we will not be Japanese fetish-sizing leg entanglements. It's a cumbersome and unnecessary language barrier in a sport with already too many names for things. We will give judo its due where there's actually a real precedence, and not just because we want to sound cultured. There are 3 common scenarios where you will be forced to transition to single leg X from butterfly guard. More often than not, when you attempt a butterfly sweep versus a kneeler, they will post their leg or arm into base to stop the sweep. Sometimes you won't even be able to create an angle of attack, but still be forced to elevate or risk getting smashed down. And finally, you will sometimes be blocked or lose double underhooks and need to switch to double triceps control. Really grab the meat of the triceps. Smaller hands might have to control it closer to the elbow tip, like a wrestler's elbow tie. So how do you actually transition to single leg X? Well, you will often do a little bunny hop or scoot under, depending on how far away you are. And then you will universally rock to your shoulder. This rocking motion will assist you in elevating the other person, but only elevate to the bare minimum to shoot your legs straight through to the other side. This is the biggest mistake in transitioning. Against strong resistance, most people try and use a butterfly hook to enter single leg X. They keep the leg cocked in an arcing movement. This telegraphs your entry, and you risk having them cut across your extended structure and placing too much weight at the end of your lever. Technically, in theory, You only need to lift as high as the thickness of your thigh against a heavily resisting opponent, and rolling to your shoulder does the vast majority of this. It's more important that your leg goes straight through. Also, don't rely on flexibility to complete the transition. Move your torso away to the side to improve your angle. And lastly, you will often have to use your arms to push yourself free of grips and body weight. To better illustrate single leg X control, we will demonstrate the key details on a standing opponent. You have two legs. Your clamping or wrapping leg will go from the inside and around your opponent's primary leg. The heel will then bite down on the hip. The other leg will shear across, acting as a tight wedge. Don't try to simply Suzanne Summers squeeze with both thighs. This is weaker and you will tire easily. The lower half of your shearing leg will often flare out and catch underneath the buttocks of the passer's other leg. It effectively hides that foot from control and can aid in sweeping mechanics that we will demonstrate later on. Also, it isn't necessary to overhook the foot in an ankle lock grip. This can actually free their foot to move more freely when they are standing. You can always switch to it later on. An elbow pinch at the foot is often more effective, and this was first demonstrated by Rolly Delgado in his Legal Leg Locks DVD. What's the difference between a sweep and a takedown? Is it a sweep if the legs generate most of the force and the arms steer? Is it a takedown if the arms are dominant but the legs drive? In competition, things rarely look like the smooth operator in the DVD, unless you're Keenan Cornelius. Reality looks more like a leg entanglement and an attempt to get up with the leg followed by a brute takedown. So let's introduce the technical tackle. It's as if a technical stand-up made an ugly baby with a wrestling single leg takedown. It can be as simple as getting up with an overhook or ankle lock grip. However, it is vital to build up to your elbow and palm to match the force vector before attempting to extend them back with a push kick. The biggest mistakes are to rush an underhook without any support and failing to build up to a proper posting arm, which can result in being driven back down to the mat. Once you've built your posting arm and created enough distance, it is vital to then plant your former primary leg's foot into base and stand. The kneeler is an easy victim and may simply fall over. If they post and stand, well, you may have to wrestle. Nevertheless, in no-gi it can be slippery and require a more complex chambering sequence to secure the underhook. With an overhook grip around the primary leg, underhook the knee pit with your future posting arm while on your shoulder for support. Quickly pummel under and secure a grip on the kneecap while opening it up. Now again, get up by building a post and push kicking away. If they try to run away during the chambering sequence, secure the ankle and drive chest down while dragging them backwards. If the opponent looks to bolt out of your leg entanglement with speed and force, it is necessary to transition to a crab ride. Yes, that's crab ride. Sorry, blame wrestling. Modern sports jiu-jitsu features many inverted crab ride positions, and there are lots of resources out there for those who like to go all upside downsy, like Matt Kwan's modern inverted jiu-jitsu. When someone turns and tries to run away, many things can happen, but universally you must try to catch the ankle using any kind of 2-on-1 control. Using the placeholder concept, climb to the hip as fast as possible, but only releasing one grip at a time while another is being secured. Don't just watch them passively. They are exposing their backs to get away from you, so chase them if you have to. The single biggest mistake is not being willing to battle and just letting go of grips. Remember, being on the bottom is losing. There are three main types of crab ride scenarios from the back. In the classic case, the opponent turns to flee but either posts weakly on the ground or stands up. Securing double ankle control is enough to allow for a simple crab ride where the shins are flared into the knee pits and pressing forwards brings them to their knees. Or they stand and you can easily kick out their base. If the opponent adducts their legs in a goalie stance, this can neutralize the crab hooks. You will not be able to pin them to their knees if they are likewise active posting with their arms. Multiple-time world champion Mikey Musumeci frequently stomps on the back of the knee pits in order to pin his opponent. This seems like a great strategy, and we will only add the detail of stomping on a 45-degree angle one leg at a time to help break down a stubborn opponent. And finally, a very difficult opponent will flee early and leave their secondary leg out of reach. You will need to secure an immediate 2-on-1 grip on the Achilles using the heel as an anchor and recruit your inside leg as a calf clamp. Make sure to engage your glutes and flare your shins strongly to keep your structure stable and avoid potential knee injuries. Form an X with your other leg and look to secure the other ankle. You can even transition to your other leg clamping over if the structure of your initial leg feels compromised. And unless the rules allow it, Try not to turn this into a calf crusher. According to acclaimed instructor John Danaher, there's always a primary and a secondary leg. The primary leg is the focus of your principal control during your leg entanglement, while the secondary leg is the source of their defense. Similarly, in terms of sweeping and takedowns, the secondary leg provides balance, and in order to efficiently sweep someone, it is necessary to disrupt or overwhelm the secondary leg while keeping the primary leg under control. Having said that, this is best illustrated using the most common sweeping mechanism. Despite a growing legion of different leg entanglements or guards, the vast majority of sweeps could be classified as double ankle sweeps. In all these cases, a primary leg is immobilized and the opponent's secondary leg is either already present or forced within reach, and they are then swept backwards after both ankles are denied the ability to base, and a force is applied at or above the knees. The opponent stands from single leg X with a narrow base. You simply just grab both ankles and bridge forward. Hell, almost any leg configuration will work then because base is so compromised. Okay, let's try to simplify things for the future and designate the guard player's legs as either being an inside leg or an outside leg. Your inside leg is the leg occupying the deeper position with respect to your opponent, like the single leg X wrapping leg. Your outside leg, meanwhile, is a leg in the shallower position and still capable of being used as a defensive frame, like the single leg X shearing leg. This designation will become more apparent when we introduce more guards in the future. We can also illustrate a variation on the double ankle sweep theme from the classic X guard, made popular by the first king Marcelo Garcia. When moving from single leg X to X, the inside leg travels across the inside groin of your opponent's secondary leg. It can also be played on the primary leg, but we will come back to that later. The outside leg, meanwhile, becomes a sticky foot behind the knee pit of the secondary leg, and it's important to keep your knees flared out and that you move to sit on an angle that maintains leg pressing ability. From the classic X guard, if again the opponent stands tall, but now their ankles out of your hand's reach, slide your outside leg down to the Achilles and flare both your legs out, resulting in a split style sweep. And don't forget to stand up while admiring your work. Since sweeps and takedowns are very similar, it is no surprise that becoming more effective at either involves understanding how to off-balance your opponent. This is where judo has left an indelible imprint on many grappling arts through the use of kuzushi to generate throws and foot sweeps. The same ideas apply to sweeps from the guard, so this is actually appropriate appropriation. The concept is pretty simple, although application and learning to read the dynamic changes is much more difficult. Basically, you steer the person one way, and if they topple over, great. If you meet resistance, then quickly steer them in the other direction. In classic video game speak, button mash A until A doesn't work, then mash B, or vice versa. Essentially, kuzushi is the art of creating and locating the weak planes of resistance, or where there is now weak base, and exploiting that to create a throw, a trip, a takedown, or a sweep. We can demonstrate this again with single leg X and a standing opponent with a relatively narrow base. First, we have the basic twist sweep. Turn in sharply and even attempt to grab the secondary ankle. This will cause your opponent to overcompensate and step back to avoid losing balance. You can then turn out with a bridge while blocking the foot with your elbow pinch for the sweep. Next, we have what I've dubbed the reap sweep. Turn out, or after meeting too much resistance on the twist, then turn back in suddenly while grabbing just above the knee and rolling through. This may or may not be interpreted as legal, so if you get DQ'd, it ain't my fault. We'll address this at the end of the unit. The kuzushi concept works in all potential planes by blocking the secondary leg with a stiff arm and kicking them forwards. While threatening to grab the other ankle, you might cause a response of popping back up, where you can now sweep them backwards. That's basically how kuzushi or off-balancing works: in then out then in, forward then backwards, or as you'll see shortly, down then up. As already discussed in the technical tackle, standing up is a matter of matching potential force vectors should they resist, and quickly getting into base with your posture intact. Off a potential sweep, you also have the added issue of not leaving access to your feet in play as you attempt to stand. This can be a simple timing issue of getting up promptly using the momentum of their falling to assist you, and then immediately getting into an athletic stance. Or the ensuing struggle, often due to admiring your almost sweep when you are inexperienced, will result in the need to control the secondary leg as well, a position the Danaher Death Squad refers to as double trouble. This not only gives you the chance to switch primary legs during a leg attack, but also a means to bail the entanglement and stand. Getting up is always a great option since you're in an inferior position. Having said that, fortune often favors the bold, and you might say, fuck it, let's go nuclear and attack a leg, and that's perfectly fine so long as you remain in a position to easily bail and stand up. Baby's first leg lock is traditionally the so-called straight ankle lock, or foot lock, or Achilles lock. When done efficiently, it isn't straight at all, but a twisted lock that targets the three ligaments on the outside of the ankle, the ones you're most likely to sprain in everyday life. In fact, most leg locks targeting the foot involve pretty much the same goal as spraining the ankle. Ankle lock, toe hold, heel hook. It's more a matter of efficiency to damage ratio, with a properly applied heel hook being the most damaging to both ankle and knee. This is not to say that a Herculean human could not just reef with all their might in some brutish fashion and break your tibia or mangle your ligaments with a straight ankle lock, but this is how a mere mortal might do it. I won't go into exhaustive detail about alternative leg positioning or nuanced differences in grips. There are lots of resources out there. Let's simply start with our single leg X with the inside leg clamped and the outside leg shearing. I'll demonstrate it without the leg entanglement first so you can see the mechanics. Grab a superficial ankle lock grip to start. Now slide down the Achilles with the blade of your wrist bone that follows your thumb, as if you were giving a thumbs up. Some bony ass people will have the blessing of a very long ridge all the way to the mid forearm. I unfortunately do not, so I have to focus on a mere inch at my wrist. Keep your hand fighting to stay high up on the chest as much as possible the whole time. That's crucial. Fold your elbow to your ribs as far back as the foot will allow without slipping. Tiny feet require shallower chicken wing. Uppercut your arm even higher. You will then not just fall to your shoulder, but pivot so you're almost facing down. Try and avoid extending your torso too far away and risk loosening your leg entanglement. Also be sure to remain propped up on your elbow until you have locked in the foot and only then roll down to your shoulder. You can finish with one arm, both like a guillotine choke, or transition to a very powerful tripod position, which also gives you a chance to bail quite easily. Please see Riley Bodycomb for excellent details on the tripod ankle lock.